Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here. We are Team Psych Patrol studying police interactions in the U.S. Our original research question was, is there a correlation between negative police interactions and one's race and/or socioeconomic status? Why we chose this topic is that the harsh and unfair treatment of minorities under law enforcement and other institutions alike has always been a prevalent issue, but in recent months, we've run into a number of cases of police brutality, such as the famous cases of Breonna Taylor, Elijah McClain, and George Floyd, to name a few, which in turn makes our topic especially polarizing and relevant as protests and the BLM movement continue to rise with more strength in numbers every day. In conducting this research, we hope that our data combined with past research can be used by those in higher authority positions to implement meaningful changes wherever necessary. And we also hope to spread more awareness of the weight of this issue. So past research we sourced that inspired our own hypothesis. One example would be an article titled "The Influence of Race in Police to Civilian Interactions." This was conducted in 2008, in which the researchers sampled video recordings that were randomly reviewed from police cars in Ohio. Their original hypothesis was that Black drivers would experience more extensive policing than white drivers. The findings were that Black drivers were 2 times more likely to be stopped for a non-moving violation. Black drivers were stopped on average 2.6 minutes longer, were 5 times more likely to be investigated for illegal items and asked if they were carrying drugs or weapons, asked to leave the vehicle, and have the vehicle physically searched. These findings support the idea that the hypothesis was true. Another example would be an article titled "Dissecting the Complexities of the Relationship Between Police Officer to a Civilian, Race/Ethnicity Dyads, and Less Than Lethal Use of Force." This was conducted in 2017, and their data was gathered from 5,630 all use of force reports in Dallas, Texas. The findings were that white officers' interactions with non-white civilians represented 48% of total interactions. But of those 48%, 67% of those interactions were white to Black, the civilians being Black and the officers being white. The results indicates a positive correlation between minority races and increased instances of police interactions.
For the purpose of this study, our group made 3 hypotheses based around our constructs. Hypothesis 1 hypothesized that participants who experience more police interactions will be happier. After running our test, we found that the initial hypothesis was not supported. Results showed that more police interactions one had, the less happier they were. Hypothesis 2 hypothesized that participants who experience more police interactions will have higher stress levels. After running our test, we found that this hypothesis was also not supported. The results showed that there was no significant correlation between the 2 variables. Hypothesis 3 hypothesized that participants with more police interactions will feel safer around police. After running the test, our third hypothesis was also not supported. Results showed no significant correlation between the 2 variables as well.
Moving on to the method section of our study, our research design that we used was a correlational design. We used this design because we correlated police interactions to the 3 other constructs, which were safety, happiness, and stress and/or anxiety. The sampling strategy that we used was convenient sampling. It was used because the survey was placed on Cal Poly Pomona's survey website, SONA, and using the sampling method allowed us as researchers to quickly administer the survey to psychology students to find participants that accurately represented our target population. So our demographics in this survey were, out of 100 people that responded, we only used 91 because some of them didn't answer. So 91 participants were used to run the statistical analysis. And of those, 51.1% of participants were Hispanic, 79.3% of participants were female, and 28.3% of participants self-identified as having a low socioeconomic status, and 60.9% identified as having a middle range socioeconomic status. So we did pilot our survey, and in that pilot, we had 45 multiple choice questions that were based on a Likert scale and a brief demographic section located at the end. And it was run on 15 Cal Poly Pomona students who were enrolled in survey research. And the feedback that we received on our initial pilot survey was that questions all sounded very similar and that there were no clear instructions. So based on that feedback, we made changes. And those changes that we made were adding instructions that were very clear, so all participants were on the same page, and changing questions so that they didn't sound very similar. And in total, we had 50 questions in the final survey. And we operationally defined our constructs. For police interaction, we said it was the act of being pulled over, communicating with, or seeing a police officer on active duty. Stress, anxiety levels was the act of someone's palms, hands getting sweaty, an increase in heart rate and or breathing when interacting with a police officer on active duty. Happiness was the act of feeling gratitude, interest, or inspiration when interacting with the police officer. And safety was the act of feeling protected, secure, safe, and out of danger when interacting with an active duty police officer. And based on these constructs and the Likert scale that we used, 1 was correlated with the score or with the answer strongly disagree, and 5 was with the answer strongly agree. So someone that scored closer to a 5, we could correlate that they had high anxiety and stress levels when interacting with police, and with 1, we could say that they had little to no anxiety or stress when interacting with police officers.
So we had a total of 100 participants, but 9 were removed due to incomplete results. So that left our sample of n equals 91. Our first hypothesis was that people who experience more interactions with the police will be happier. And we ran the Pearson's R correlation to compare happiness levels with police interaction. There was no significant correlation present between a participant's happiness level and police interaction, with an R value of negative 0.181, a mean of 2.512, and a standard deviation of 0.963. Our second hypothesis was that people who experience more interactions with the police experience more stress. The Pearson's R correlations test was conducted to compare stress levels with police interaction, and there was no significant correlation found between stress levels and police interactions, with an R value of 0.133, a mean of 3.257, and a standard deviation of 0.73. Our third hypothesis was that people with more interactions with the police will feel safer, and the Pearson's R correlation test was conducted to test if the correlation was present, and there was no significant correlation found between safety and police interactions, with an R value of 0.036, a mean of 2.39, and a standard deviation of 0.466. So in conclusion, all 3 of our hypotheses were false.
So how do we make sense of this data and information, and where does this take our research from here? The results indicate that there is no correlation between police interactions, happiness, higher stress levels, or feeling safer around police. So what does that mean for our research? Because all of the hypotheses did not indicate a correlation between these things, we have to assume that there must be more research done on this topic. This research will provide deeper questions as to why people belonging to a minority group or a lower socioeconomic status view police interactions so negatively. This research also gives us the opportunity to investigate other factors not mentioned in this study that could have significance in relation to the topic of this study. The study also provides the reader with a newfound awareness of the complications that go into measuring things like emotions, perspectives, and experiences of people who have been historically oppressed. With the social climate in this country, it has never been more vital for studies on this topic to be done. More specifically, on the effects of negative police interactions with people of minority groups or socioeconomic status, low socioeconomic status. Future studies can be used to provide data to elected officials or people who hold public office so that they can make informed decisions and make our society more equal and fair.
So some limitations in this study may be the sample. In this study, we used students at Cal Poly Pomona as a sample because it was convenient. This may have impacted the results based on the age range in a university. Due to non-response, we only used 91 out of the 100 participants needed, which can also affect the external validity. Time constraint was also a limitation because with more time, we could have completed more tests and analysis. So, and language barrier is another limitation because our study targets minorities and the majority of our participants were Latino. So we should think about potential language barriers for non-English speakers.
Extending these findings for future research, this acknowledgement of differential interactions at places based on race and socioeconomic status may be difficult but important for both the police and the community. Police easily acknowledge the levels of crime and violence of a place, and even the socioeconomic status of a neighborhood can affect the style of services. For future studies, we should incorporate other victimization experiences that may influence satisfaction with police. The finding may indicate consistency between victimization and harassment on interactions with police. Overall, the finding highlights the conflicts that both experiences, social class have within the variations of the perception of the police. Our findings are counter to previous literature where studies had found a decrease in police interactions.
And this last slide just shows all the references that we used when conducting this research.